Vasishta continued, O Ram, so long as one does not subdue the mind with the mind, one cannot attain self-knowledge. It might seem like a contradiction, subduing the mind with the mind. It's rather like expecting the teeth to bite themselves. The fact is, we can take control of our attention. It might not seem that way sometimes, especially if we're trying to do a focusing meditation exercise. But if we have some awareness of our psychological tendencies, if we've touched that place where awareness is aware of itself, or the attention can attend to itself, then we can begin our spiritual practice, which is about subduing the mind with the mind, which means not getting caught up in our psychological tendencies, or at least being aware of them. And with awareness comes a loosening, and with that loosening comes freedom, or we can then take control of the attention. It becomes our own once again. And this is what's meant by self-knowledge. It's the whole process of spiritual realization. And as long as one entertains the false notions of I and mine, so long sorrow does not come to an end, even as the sun in a painting never sets. There is a legend that illustrates this truth. I shall now narrate it to you. This legend isn't actually any more than a conversation, but let's go with it. A lot of these conversations and descriptions of self-realization, they're put into a certain setting to evoke a particular openness, an anticipation of something worthwhile. So here we go. There is a great mountain which is as high as the three worlds put together. On its peaks dwell the gods, in the middle dwell human beings, and at its base dwell the beings of the netherworld. It is known as Sahya. It's probably also Meru as well, Mount Meru. It contains everything, as it were. On it there is the hermitage of the sage Atri. In it there dwelt two sages known as Brihaspati and Sukra, each of whom had a son known as Vilasa and Bhasa respectively. The two boys grew up into young men. They were very greatly attached to each other and were inseparable. In course of time the two elder sages, Brihaspati and Sukra, left this world. Grief-stricken, the two young men performed the appropriate funeral rites. On account of the loss of their fathers, they felt disinterested in property, wealth, etc., and both of them thereupon went away to the forest, each in a different direction, to lead a nomadic life. After a considerable time, once again they met each other. It's probably worth remarking on that many of these stories often do begin with a bereavement. Once you've had a bereavement, then you really start questioning things, don't you? The assumptions that you had when you were caught up in your relationship with the one that's gone have all been brought into question. Vilasa said to his friend Bhasa, "What a delight to meet you again, O my dearest friend. Tell me what you have been doing since we parted. Did your austerities bear fruit? Has your mind rid itself of the burning fever of worldliness? Have you attained self-knowledge? Tell me, are you well and happy?" Bhasa replied, "I consider myself extremely fortunate to see you again, my very dear friend and brother. However, how can we who are wandering in this world appearance ever be well and happy unless and until we attain the highest wisdom, until the psychological perversions cease? Until we cross this ocean of world cycle, how can we be well and happy? Until the hopes and desires born of the mind have been completely destroyed, how can we be well and happy? Until we attain self-knowledge, We shall return again to this plane of birth and death to undergo childhood, youth, manhood, old age and death again and again. We shall engage ourselves in the same essenceless actions and experiences. Cravings destroy wisdom. Cravings take us away from ourselves. They undermine our own sense of being. And yet it's probably that feeling of being that we want to complete through our cravings. So cravings are like our medicine, which are actually the disease. Lost in satisfying sensual appetites, life ebbs away fast. The mind falls into the blind well of sense pleasure. It is a wonder how and why this body, which is an excellent vehicle to take us to the other shore of self-knowledge, falls into the mire of worldliness. In the twinkling of an eye, this little ripple known as the mind assumes terrible proportions. That's the cognitive process. This is part and parcel of our education. Our whole education is about the cognitive process. And just imagine where all that leads to. But this isn't to say that it's wrong. We just have to get it into perspective. Man foolishly ascribes to the self the sorrow and the sufferings that do not touch it in the least and becomes miserable. Well, we have this sense that there can't possibly be anything really good at the centre of our being. Because when we look within, what we generally find is pain. And it's that pain which drives most of us to seek some kind of oblivion, whether it's in work or in relationships. We don't want to look at it too closely, it's terrifying. Maybe this is the pain of the suicide. This is being described here as a mistake. Man foolishly ascribes to the self the sorrow and the sufferings, which actually don't touch it in the least. And that's the realization we're looking for. That essence in ourself, which is actually beyond the pain.